I'm 100% Team Mark. Spoilers for Invincible Season 3. There's a lot to say about the conflict between Mark and Cecil, but after watching and re-watching the first 3 episodes, I genuinely think this isn't a gray area or a both parties have a good point. I think Mark was absolutely right to distrust Cecil, right to stop working with him, and should definitely never work with him again. I hope you can agree with me, or at least see my point, after this long-ass post. This is seriously a whole lot of fucking yap, but please bear with me. Main point 1. I kind of think that rehabilitating Darkwing 2 and Dida, a Sinclair was the right decision. But how can you say you're 100% Team Mark? Because Mark, in principle, might have agreed with that too. But Cecil reflexively, immediately lied to him in both cases. Imagine if the first time Mark defeated D, a Sinclair he was told, instead of that deed, A would be locked up forever, that they would attempt to rehabilitate him, that they would be very careful, but if his genius could be used for good, they should do that, while not letting him hurt anyone else. Do you honestly believe that Mark would have been completely, immovably opposed to this? No, you don't believe that for a second, because that's not in Mark's character at all. He works with Titan very early on, because he thinks that even if someone is a bad guy, common ground can be found. And after he had worked with his dad, do you think he would have objected immovably to Darkwing's potential rehabilitation? If he had been told the truth, for the first time? Again, no. This isn't just me headcanoning a character to agree with me. Invincible is consistently willing to work with villains, Titan, Omni-Man, as long as he's told about it and is allowed to build a relationship with them and has it all happen above board. This isn't a situation where Mark is opposed to rehabilitation. That's a complete misread of Mark's character and of what actually happened. Mark stopped both of these villains and trusted Cecil to put them in prison, only to learn that Cecil had lied to him and never told him until he absolutely had to. If whenever Mark gives something to Cecil on the basis of trust, he'll lie to him, and not only that, he'll present his lie as something that Mark is immature for objecting to, then how is Mark supposed to work with him? Main point 2. You can't trust Cecil. Cecil acted like the most adversarial agent Mark could possibly have confronted, and genuinely there is absolutely no way that he should ever work with him or give him anything. It doesn't even matter if Mark eventually admits Cecil was right about the initial rehabilitation point, because that isn't their primary disagreement by the end of the fight. First, Cecil lied to Mark over and over and over. Mark treated Cecil like a trusted mentor and boss, willingly telling him a lot of stuff on a good faith basis. He literally tells Cecil about the Reanimen before he works for him. He tells him how he killed Angstrom Levi, when there was no way for Cecil to find that out. It happened in a different dimension. But Cecil, as I explained before, hides information from Mark on a reflexive basis. You can't work with someone who responds to your good faith like that. Second, Cecil consistently uses Mark's trust to hurt him. Every single time Mark feels pain or goes to Cecil for comfort, Cecil is taking notes in the background. First, the Reanimen. This is the most excusable, because Omni-Man is an active threat, and Cecil doesn't actually know Mark isn't on his side. But isn't this a good reason to not tell Mark they're rehabilitating Sinclair? They could just tell Mark they're gonna try, and then let him think it isn't working until they realize Invincible doesn't agree with Omni-Man. That would have been completely understandable. Second, the surgery and the Soundwave. Mark comes to the GDA when injured and for surgery, and they respond by implanting a torture chip in his head. Mark helps out the GDA with the Atlantis situation, and Cecil responds by recording the sound and playing it in said torture chip. Mark tells Cecil about Angstrom, and Cecil responds by using it to try to emotionally manipulate him. Third, Cecil uses Mark's desire to be a good person to manipulate him. Mark tells him, "I don't want to be like Omni-Man," and Cecil jumps on that, using this genuine desire to try to control Mark as much as possible. The second Mark does anything that Cecil doesn't like. It's, "Oh, you wouldn't want to be Omni-Man," in the most transparently manipulative way possible. You can't, and I need to stress this, you can't work with someone like this. You can't talk to them. You can't give them information. You can't let them observe you, even. Cecil has proven that any additional thing he knows about Mark, whether it's a motivation, emotional vulnerability, weakness, or access to his body, even under the guise of surgery, can and will be used against him if he ever disagrees with Cecil. When you're dealing with someone that adversarial, who you tried to establish a trust-based relationship with, and who responded by using all of your trust against you, you just stop having any relationship with them, or you neutralize them. Given Mark has a no-kill rule, he absolutely made the right call. Main point 3. Cecil was absolutely wrong to start the fight. Mark is angry with him, but never at any point makes any motion to actually hurt him. This is, at worst, "I'm not working for you anymore if you keep doing this" moment. Cecil cannot reasonably claim that Mark was acting threateningly enough to justify bringing him to the White Room and sicking the reanimant on him and torturing him with the sound wave. That is a complete bullshit excuse. But Mark was refusing to see reason. Bullshit. Stop talking. Cecil doesn't have the unilateral right to demand Mark cooperate with him and agree with him. He doesn't have the right to start attacking him because Mark might not work for him anymore. And he doesn't have the right to torture Mark until he agrees to go back to the headquarters with him. And Mark has every right to object to that, and to not go back there with Cecil. Cecil doesn't own Mark. Mark actually has no obligation to just go along with whatever Cecil says, because he's not a fucking slave, and Cecil treats him like one, and actually tortures him when he gets out of line. If you think Cecil was justified in hiding things from Mark, I don't think that was the right move, but I get it. If you think he was justified in using Mark's trust to find ways to kill him, I disagree with you, but I see the reasoning. If you think Cecil has the right to randomly torture and beat up his employees if they don't agree to do whatever he wants, I don't know what to say.